God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robinson. Glad to have you here. And we've been watching this situation in Ukraine, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and we have mission partners over there, and it's been very, very difficult. I know, obviously, a war-torn country is a place of horror stories and difficulty. There are some good things going on, even through all of this mess, both in Ukraine and wider areas across Eastern Europe. And so I want to get a little bit of an update, see what's going on over there, see what good things are happening, and see what some of the challenges are. So I'm excited to welcome Dirk Smith, who is the Vice President of Eastern European Mission, which is an organization that has been working for over 60 years, primarily getting Bibles in the hands of people in their language, which is always something I can stand behind, but some other interesting things. So we'll find out a little bit about that, get a little bit of an update. So appreciate you guys being here. Dirk, welcome to Life Today Live. Good to have you.
Randy, thanks for having me. Good to be with you. Good to be here.
Let's start in the hot spot in Ukraine, because I've heard lots of stories from people on the ground. What's going on with your organization?
We're busy. I mean, obviously our core activity is we publish, print, and distribute Bibles and Bible-based materials in last year 35 different countries, 26 different languages. But last year, the increase in the Ukrainian language was 40% in 1 year.
Wow.
So it's busy, and primarily, Randy, we're seeing just the resolve of the Ukrainian Christians, the believers. They're all in. They're all in disciples, and as they're traveling with other Ukrainians, and they're dealing with the same hell. They're all in the same situation, but the believers are handling it with, dare I say, some peace that passes understanding. And so the non-believers are looking at them and saying, how are you doing this? How are you doing this in a better way than me? And so then they share about Jesus. They either give their Bible away, or they're the ones who are asking. They get where they're going. And, of course, the requests are coming in from all the border countries, Poland and Hungary, all the surrounding countries, because they don't have Bibles in Ukrainian. And we're getting reports that they're asking for Bibles even before they're asking for humanitarian aid, which is kind of bizarre.
Yeah.
They want the foundation. I mean, they want what's going to last, because, man, their foundation has been rocked for sure. But yeah, from a physical perspective, this war is, man, it is so wrong. The war crimes are just mounting, and this is not military. I mean, we're bombing civilians. I mean, we're bombing houses that have sleeping children in them, and they know that. Putin is just it's evil. It's straight up evil.
Yeah. Have any of your people, whether from outside or in country, locals, have they been affected in any way negatively, other than? I mean, obviously, dislocation would be an obvious one. Where's your base? Do you have a base in Kyiv there?
Yeah, in Kyiv. Yeah, we're in Kyiv. Yeah, so I mean, of course, our national director for Ukraine, Dasha Novikova, she's originally from Donetsk, the Donbass region. So she had to flee. Yeah, she had to flee and leave. Her and her parents lived together. She's a single mom, and they had a nice little house, and her dad was a beekeeper, and beautiful little place. And then, of course, the separatists come in. They got to get up and leave, and they don't know where they're going. We helped get them relocated in Kyiv. We got them all set up in Kyiv. Everything's going great, and then this happens. Yeah. And so we got them. We evacuated her and the women. We were able to evacuate them to our offices in Vienna, which is where our home base is in Europe. But the men had to stay. They can't leave. Yeah. But we had one of our people who ultimately left Ukraine and decided to come to the States. I mean, her apartment was completely destroyed. Thankfully, she was in Vienna when it happened, but I mean, bomb hit and destroyed her place. It's just so random.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to imagine. You're sitting here as we're sitting here talking, and bombs going off
Yeah.
just all around you, and you have no idea. I mean, it's not like you're near a military, infrastructure to where you think, okay, I'm at risk. Everybody's at risk.
Yeah.
It's just so
Yeah.
It's just so random.
Since this thing has been dragging out, it seems like the Russian strategy is to raise it to the ground. A lot of places, and we've actually seen that. I mean, I've seen footage of places that just wiped out. Do you guys work in Russia at all?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
How is that going? Because I mean, that is just wild to think that you're doing work that you've been doing for decades, and now you find yourself working on both sides of a war.
Yeah. Well, because the people in Russia are hurting. They don't want this war. That's the interesting thing. If your name ends in like Ova or Va and you're Russian, your roots are Ukrainian. So your nation is now bombing your ancestors. And they know this is wrong. So the citizens of Russia, I was in Russia in 2019, was in St. Petersburg, and then took a train down to Moscow, and never been more warmly welcomed by any people group than I was the Russian people. Wow. I mean, absolutely warm, wonderful people. So, and I know I've said this before, and I know you get this, but it's very, very easy. We tend to do this. It's just human nature. We want to put people in boxes, and so we want to say Ukrainians good, Russians bad. And that's just not true. We've got Russians who are just begging for the Bible, and our distribution has increased in Russia over the last 2 years. I mean, they're hungry. They're hungry for God's word. And again, everybody's being hurt. Now, they're not being hurt near to the magnitude. It's completely different.
Right.
But they're being affected by this as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, some of their relatives and sons are being sent off to fight in some cases.
Yeah. Well, and they're fleeing, and I know people, if they're, listeners, they just follow the news. I mean, Russian young men are fleeing the country by droves.
They
They got to get out.
Yeah, they don't want to be drafted.
They don't want to be drafted. They don't want to go fight in this. And all the reports, of course, media is not really reporting on it, but how many Russian soldiers are surrendering? I mean, just putting down their weapon, just going, I'm not doing this. I don't want to do this. Please take me. And Bakhmut recently in the news, people are following it. Ukraine, here they are, little Ukraine. They've pushed the Russian troops back. They're coming back and taking Bakhmut. And then, of course, what happens after that happens? We got the bombings in Kyiv that just took place.
Yeah.
We're just gonna keep. We can't beat you on the ground. So,
how does that impact the people that you're trying to reach? Do you find that sort of conflict and just devastation, darkness, if you will, does it make them more receptive to the gospel in some way?
Oh man, yeah, Randy. I mean, all we got to do is, just go back to Jesus' parable of the sower. I don't know why we call it the parable of the sower. It really ought to be called the parable of the soils. And where there's good soil and the seed gets planted, you can't stop it. You can't stop it from growing. And that's really good soil. I think all of us would look back in our lives, and when trauma or something earthly, devastation or trauma or stress happened in our lives, we can look back and go, if I was a believer, I either hang on to God, and in that time I grew so much, or I walk away from God, which is, of course, tragic. My family's been through it here recently. I mean, well, I say recently, in the last 4 years. My wife of 34 years was diagnosed with ALS. Back June of 2020, she had struggled with something. We didn't know what it was. She just passed away in January. And, so when you go through trauma, and I'm looking at my kids, and, she said to me, we had this prayer that we prayed for our kids, and that was, God, give our kids whatever they need to make you number one in their lives. And my mother prayed it for me, made my wife aware of it. And I'll never forget, she came to me and said, are you aware of this prayer your mom prays for you and your siblings? I said, yeah, I am. I was hoping you wouldn't find out, because I was afraid you'd want us to pray for it for our kids. So she said, we need to. So we started praying that prayer, and I'll never forget, about a year into her journey with ALS, she looked at me and she said, "You know that prayer we've been praying for our kids?" I said, "Yeah." She said, she pointed to herself. She said, "I think this is it. I think this is the answer." And I said, "All right, well, God and I have had some serious conversations. I'm going to have another serious with him because, I'm not excited about that at all." And she looked at me and she said, "Wait a second. Haven't you said you would die for our kids?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Why not me? Why not me?" So, and I have watched my kids travel this, Randy, and I will tell you, they're different today. They are different today than they were. So when we go through trials, man, we grow. And that's exactly what's happening over there. I mean, there's some serious trials, but the soil's being churned up. So the seed lands, you can't stop it. You can't stop it. They become all in disciples where they recognize, man, this isn't our home. This is not the kingdom. We have a kingdom that covers a much greater area, and it's never going to cease. And that's what they talk about, and that's what they're engaging with.
Wow. Man, my condolences. I did not know that.
No, it's good. No, it's good. I mean, I don't say that it's honestly, if people are listening to anybody who's experienced ALS, it's a blessing. It's a blessing when they go. It's a horrible disease. So yeah, she's free. She is at her perfect rest.
Those types of things, I've lost people close to me, not my wife or a child, thank God at this point. But when we lose someone close like that, it should force more of an eternal perspective and an evaluation, a reevaluation of what's important.
Yeah.
And I can only think that when we respond the way that you are, which is the right way, that it elevates the significance of the gospel and eternal perspective. I'm guessing that, you're probably already there, but it just deepens it in that regard.
Yeah. Well,
how does this affect what you do?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, I've always been passionate about what I do. I mean, I haven't always been in nonprofit. I was for-profit for a long time, healthcare consulting, management consulting. I mean, I've got my MBA. I don't have a theology degree. But man, when I started doing what I'm doing for EM, I was passionate about it. Sharing the gospel with people, getting people Bibles in their language you've never had before. I mean, that's crazy. What an opportunity. But boy, I've never been more passionate about it than I am now, especially with the war, because I can easily look at me and say, "Oh, woe is me," but there's no place for that. I'm not the only person that's lost his wife. My kids aren't the only kids who've lost their mom. And that doesn't make it easier. It doesn't make it good, but we're not alone. But there's always blessings because I can look at the folks in Ukraine and say, I had a 3-year warning. I had a 3-year, when she was diagnosed, we knew she's going to die. But those little kids that were laying in their bed just went to bed, kissed their mom kissed them goodnight, and then a bomb drops on them. Yeah. Then you got grandma and grandpa that may be survived or whoever the survivors are. It's, that's tragic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the stuff so they are looking for hope. They are looking for hope, as we all should be.
Yeah.
It's so easy though. We fall back into it. When things are going good, and what does James say? This life is a vapor. It's a mist. And as my wife used to say, the problem is sometimes it's a pretty good vapor. It's a pretty good mist.
Sure.
We're kind of fat and happy. We're like, hey, life is good. And so then we forget. We focus on this kingdom and God gets pushed to the side. But it's not happening over there. I mean, they are all in. And I was just there last week in Vienna and got to visit with our Ukrainian team members. And Randy, I'll tell you, the amazing thing is the smiles on their faces. It just never ceases to amaze me. Here they've been pushed out of their homes are destroyed. They've lost family members. They've lost friends. And I greet them, and they greet me with a hug and a smile. And because of my situation, they looked at me and said, how are you doing? I'm thinking, are you kidding me? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the eternal perspective.
Yeah.
That's the eternal perspective.
Yeah. No. And wow, I mean, what a beautiful testimony. I mean, it just, it invigorates, I think, everything that you do. I want to show people real quick, because you guys are at the tail end of a campaign, Bibles for Kids. This is their website at eem.org, which stands for Eastern European Mission. So you can go join. You want to give Bibles to kids, not just in Ukraine, but across Eastern Europe. This is a great place to do it. You mentioned that you just got back traveling. Talk about some of the other places and what's going on, because I don't know, the needs and other places across Eastern Europe, but I can imagine even though they're not in the war spotlight, there's some pretty big needs over there.
Yeah, well, the nations, I was in Vienna just briefly just to see our team because it's been 3 years just because my wife's journey and then COVID and all that mess. So I hadn't been over in a while. So I got to see them, which was really nice to catch up. And then I headed to Zagreb, Croatia. Croatia, man, what's happening there is just crazy. We've now put Bibles in the public schools in Croatia and Bosnia, Herzegovina. At the end of last year, about a million
Wow.
Bibles.
Wow.
And they're giving them to the kids in the public schools. They want to change the face of their nation. They want to get their kids back focused on a Christian worldview. And that, of course, was bred out of Ukraine, because Ukraine, we started doing that 9 years ago. And right before the war, we'd put Bibles in over 3/4 of the public schools in the nation of Ukraine. And they were teaching an elective called Christian ethics.
Wow.
And 90+% of the kids took the class, and where they saw the kids take the class, test scores went up and discipline problems went down. Go figure. It's not rocket science. And their government, they weren't just wrought with believers, but they were pragmatic. They're saying, man, if that's what's doing it, we got to offer this everywhere. So that spread. It's going to Croatia. Then I was in North Macedonia on this last trip. I mean, just last week, and visit with some fantastic people there. And they made a request, 450,000 children's Bibles for their public school children. And we had to split it up into two. We did 225 last year, and we're doing 225 this year. So some of this Bibles for Kids campaign that you mentioned is for some of these Bibles in North Macedonia. Obviously, some for Ukraine as well. But Hungary's doing it. Romania, Bulgaria. I mean, it's crazy what's happening. But Randy, I tell people, you're in Texas, so we're all the Texans. You got to understand the landmass, and if I didn't work there, and so I'm not shaming anybody. I mean, my European history was horrible until I started working there. I didn't know the map, European geography, but this would be like Mexico being the power that Russia is, coming in and invading Texas, South Texas, bombings. I mean, just imagine all that happening. And people in South Texas now start fleeing, start moving north. They get up to DFW and they get up to East Texas. And now they're spilling into Arkansas and Louisiana and Oklahoma with these horrific stories. Well, now you got, the people obviously that are still in Texas are going, good grief, that's right there, folks. I mean, that's right there. This is scary stuff. And then their missiles are coming. They're hitting DFW. It's hitting DFW periodically, just randomly, just hitting. Well, what would happen to the whole region? What would happen to people in Oklahoma and Arkansas and Tennessee, Louisiana, all the neighboring states? It would be very real.
Yeah.
Be very real.
Yeah. Because
you now would have these refugees pouring into your state looking for shelter. And you would be hearing these stories firsthand. Would our soil not be so rocky as it is right now? I mean, do you think in America we might, because we got the Bible everywhere, you think we might not be so biblically illiterate that we can't even figure out what a boy and what a girl is? And, some of the crazy that's going on, because the rudder is completely up out of the water and we've just pushed God out. When we say one nation under God, I go, come on, really?
Give me a break.
So it's something good to strive for. We're certainly not
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
We're not one
Exactly.
nation, and we're not under God. So
It should not be a slogan. Maybe a goal. Yeah, that's a goal.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we would be the same way. I think it would impact us exactly the same way.
Yeah.
People are people.
So what Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia, and Serbia were all at war back under the Clinton administration. How many years it's been?
90s. Yeah.
90s. Yeah. Is Bosnia Muslim? I know Serbia is primarily Muslim.
A lot of these nations are. Well, North Macedonia
Macedonia.
is 30% Muslim. So here's the cool thing about that. So we're putting 450,000 children's Bibles into the schools. And 30% of those kids are Muslim kids.
Wow.
Yeah. So the number, and of course I was in Greece as well. I went down to Athens because we have a lot of work there, and with all the Middle East refugees that poured in there and have poured through. I mean, God just created missionaries, and I mean, thousands and thousands of Muslims came to Jesus, and
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what does that look like? Because that's fascinating. And unfortunately, it can be seen as a political move at times. Some of the religious moves, Muslim countries don't like you Christianizing them because they view it politically. But what does it look like for the Muslims in Eastern Europe to be exposed to the gospel and to become Christians?
Well, they're being taught by fellow Muslims, so that's kind of the neat thing. And a lot of these Muslim refugees that poured in from Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq,
Syria.
Well, yeah, Syria. I mean, I'll tell you one example. I got a couple of friends who are both Afghani and live in Greece now and are missionaries to the Muslim people. I mean, they travel and they're just missionaries.
That's awesome.
But Masood is one of the guy's names, and as I saw him again when I was there and just had a great time catching up with him. But when I first met him, he and another guy, they'd become Christians, and they have this big gathering ministry there called Hellenic Ministries. Has a big gathering, and they have the 7th floor of a building, and they feed people, and every Monday night. And so it was one of those feedings, and there's like 650 Muslim refugees packed in this room, and I'm watching these guys serve, and they're having fun. You can tell they're friends. So afterwards, I went up to them and I said, "You guys are both from Afghanistan, right?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "So are you friends in Afghanistan?" And they both laughed. They went, No. I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah. He's Shiite. I'm Sunni.
Oh, wow.
In my country, we're mortal enemies. But in Jesus, we're brothers."
Oh,
and I went, "Oh my gosh, you kidding me?" So what has the power to break down the walls of a 1,500-year-old holy war? New peace treaty, new ambassador? Nah, how many of those have we been through? One thing, Jesus, Prince of Peace.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. I mean, Jesus, for a heart that is searching, a heart that's open, he transforms. And he will not be stopped.
Oh, man, I love it. I mean, see, okay, you guys watching, did I not tell you you'd hear some encouraging things? Despite the horrors that go on in this world, God works through it all and can just change the landscape for the better. I mean, we see what happens when, I would call them demonic forces, killing people indiscriminately and children, and there's terrible things going on. But we got a God who's bigger, and he can set things right, which is why I think it's important. And, we're a ministry here, but we do a lot of mission outreaches, including in Ukraine. I've been to Romania and some orphanages many years ago when AIDS was ravaging that country. But you know what? At EEM, man, they're just another player on the same team. And so I would encourage everybody watching just to find out where's God directing you, Life outreach, great. EEM, great. But just support someone who's on the ground sharing the gospel, doing things like what you're hearing out of Dirk. I want to ask you, because Dirk, you didn't ask me to do this, but what can people do for EEM that would help you the most right now?
Randy, we are limited by funds. That's it. Our distribution last year increased 28% in 1 year. And now, as I tell my team, I refuse to believe in a God who's going to open the doors up over there and not open the storehouses up over here. And so in God fashion, our donations increased 26% last year. So, but I sideline projects every year. So when our European team submitted requests for this year, it would have been a 58% increase in our budget. So if people want to get involved, EEM.org, and participate in our Bibles for Kids campaign. You're giving children a Bible that, I mean, they don't know these stories. They've never read them. And $5 provides two because of the matching funds that are there. We've got donors that are matching these gifts. So typically a Bible would be $5, but right now you give $5, you're given 2 Bibles. So give up an expensive cup of coffee, just, and give a Bible. Give 2.
Dirk, you're setting the bar too low, man. A cup of coffee, even buy 20 Bibles for crying out loud.
That's exactly right. I know. I mean, it's, and the deal is, our goal is 2.8 million for this, for 560,000. But if it's overfunded, I got about $1 million worth of projects sitting on the sideline that I can immediately say, get them in print. Let's get them out there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we always want the gospel to get out. And when you really have people shaken and hurting like they are all over Eastern Europe because of the situation in Ukraine, it's an opportunity that we as a church cannot sit on the sidelines. We got to get in the game, man. We got to get in the game on this one and offer people the hope and turn things around, with the gospel. It's, like you said, it's the only thing that can overcome all these man-made divisions and hatred and hurt and suffering. It's the only thing. So I appreciate you. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
No, man, I just appreciate you. I appreciate what you do. And it's obviously your message is unity, and that's it. That's what we're seeing over there. And I'd encourage every listener, read John 17. Just read Jesus's prayer for unity. And then just ask yourself, am I adding to this, or am I taking away from this? Yeah. And if we're taking away, man, let's repent. Let's be about the unity.
Yeah, and like James says, let's not be hearers of that word. Let's be doers. So get out there and do something, man. I love it. Again, Dirk, thank you. Appreciate all you guys watching. Hit that like, share, subscribe, other buttons that do good things, and get out there, do something. EEM.org, wonderful place to put just a few dollars, get some Bibles in people's hands. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you again next time on Life Today Live.